Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we're doing part 2 of my list ranking all of modern Doctor Who from worst to best. Now, I had 150 episodes, including The Church on a Ruby Road, and Night of the Doctor is the one mini episode that will be on this list. 150 stories that I was counting down from worst to best. In part 1, we counted from 150 through 111, taking care of kind of the bottom 40 stories. Now we will be looking at part 2, which is episodes 110 through episodes 71 on the list. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, go ahead and check out that list as well so you'll know where we stand. Now, starting at a number 110, we are looking at Face the Raven. Now, this episode is good and bad. It's good because Clara dies. Sorry, I have to do my victory lap there. That's great. And she dies because of her own, I don't want to say incompetence, but she thinks she can be the Doctor. She's very much Clara Who, trying to be the Doctor. And trying to be the Doctor is what gets her killed because she isn't the Doctor. And she messes up and she makes a mistake and she doesn't consult the Doctor. She's like, I can do it as good as the Doctor, and it bites her in the butt, which I like. It's her own comeuppance because of what happened. Now, it's some good performances all around. Jenna Coleman's putting in a good performance. Game of Thrones girl, Melise Williams, whatever her name is, she's putting in a good performance. And Peter Capaldi is putting in a good performance. Especially, I love at the end, after Clara dies, the conversation he has with her as he's being sent away by the Time Lords, when he has the little thing on his arm. That whole conversation, and right before Clara dies, too, when he's like, you know, you will fix this, or I will come back here and I will end all of this. I will end all of you, all of this over. Well, the doctor isn't here. You have to deal with me now. I love that. Capaldi is so good at that. But then I also like how Clara's like, your war would end at the sound of the first child crying. I like that because she knows him so well. And that's true. And I love that whole scene. And then after Clara dies, the bit when he's telling her, you know, you'll find the universe is a very small place when I'm angry with you. Love that. Great ending. It's just everything up to that I kind of find boring. I mean, the whole little street area with, you know, people from, you know, disguised as humans that aren't human. I just kind of find it uninteresting. I like the fact it brings back the guy from Flatline, the one that can draw and paint. I liked him. He was good in Flatline, so I like seeing him back again. And it's him being in trouble that, excuse me, that kind of causes the problems. But just, yeah, for some reason, I don't really get into this one other than that. I love the ending. It's kind of the opposite of Listen. As in, I love the ending, but everything leading up to it doesn't really do much for me, which is kind of how Listen's the opposite of that. Next on the list, and it just goes to show you how many bad episodes of modern Doctor Who there are when this is this high, is Orphan 55. Now, to be fair to Orphan 55, there's some good stuff about Orphan 55. I did an entire video called The Good, the Bad, and the Stupid of Orphan 55. There are some good things about it. Now, I haven't watched it as recently, so it's not as fresh on my mind as when I did that video. But I do love the reveal, spoiler alert, I guess, that they're on Earth, because I did not see that coming. And as tropey as that is at this point, for it to be, we were on Earth all along. It's not even the first time Doctor Who has done that. Hello, Sixth Doctor. The fact that they managed to fool me until the reveal, I always have to give points for that. Good job. They pulled the wool over my eyes. They reveal it in a very Beneath the Planet of the Apes style, which I like. And there are a couple other things in it I enjoy. I can't really think of them right off. I do like learning that the one girl is the daughter of the other girl. Trixie Belle? Oh, yeah, and she named me Trixie Belle. That's funny. But there's a lot of bad here, too, like the one woman who looks like she's off the set of Spaceballs, looks like John Candy from Spaceballs. The creature design for the creatures that are abducting people is a pretty neat design for a practical effect, not bad. The speech at the end is terrible. The whole condescending speech at the end with the, because you can save the planet, or where she's talking to the audience and it just feels like they're applying a sledgehammer to your face. Do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? We get it. We get it. We got it. And then it cuts to, you can save the planet, or, and it cuts to the creature, and then that's the ending credits. We get it. We know. You somehow figure Chibnall doesn't understand the meaning of the word subtle. I just want to hear Chibnall say that one day. I was attempting to do some subtle writing because I'm going to be over there. Subtle, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. And then there's the stupid part. Benny! Benny! Where's my Benny? Where's my shotgun? Yeah, when she goes off and gets killed by him, I'm like, Yeah, there's some good stuff in there. There's some bad stuff in there. There's some dumb stuff in there. I do like the scene when Ryan and the one girl are kind of flirting, and how 13 doesn't get it at all and like interrupts to go sit between them or whatever. That's funny too. Because I can see the Doctor not catching on to that. Not just the 13th Doctor, most Doctors not catching on, especially most of the modern Doctors not catching on to what's going on there. That's funny. I liked that. Next on the list is the Christmas Invasion. This is another one of those where, fresh off a rewatch, I'm a little kinder to it. Typically, if it's been a while since I watched it, I think of it as meh, most of the story with an exciting last 10 or 15 minutes. Pretty much everything from when Tennant wakes up is great. I enjoy it. I like it. It's nice to get used to the Doctor. It's hard for me in post-regeneration stories to get into one where the Doctor is out of commission for most of it. I don't like that. Although I do love in the behind the scenes when Tennant talks about how he spends most of the episode in bed, and that he's like, I think it's some of my finest acting, actually. That's pretty funny. I do like the scene when he wakes up temporarily to stop the tree, and he keeps trying to tell them the one thing he needs, and Jackie keeps interrupting, and he's like, I need you to be quiet. That's pretty funny, I will admit. But yeah, other than that, again, I'm kinder to it fresh off a rewatch, but after that, it's mostly, good last few minutes. I do enjoy the scene when he's picking out his clothes, and I love that Song for Tim that plays when he's picking out his clothes. That's a great song, especially the actual TV broadcast version of it, which I wish they would put on DVD, because the one that's actually on CD, printed on CD, because the one that's actually on CD is okay, but not as good. Because I do like that song a lot. And then the kind of scene when he's like, I've never seen the universe with these eyes before, and it is going to be fantastic. I actually do enjoy that line a bit. So it has a great ending. And next on the list is The Wedding of River Song. This one is messy and all over the place. This episode is the definition of messing and all over the place. Series 6 is convoluted the right word. It's just, there's so much going on. There's so much going on in this episode. It's just a jumble of messy nonsense. I don't hate the episode. It's interesting. And I love the eye patches, because I know the eye patch is not only a nod to Inferno, it is a nod to a behind-the-scenes fact about Inferno. It gets points for that, because I love Inferno. So that's cool. Of course, referencing the eye patch the brigade leader wore, and how they pulled a little trick on Nick Courtney when he turned around in the eye patch and they were all wearing eye patches. So it's a nice nod to that everyone in the episode has an eye patch. I love that. I like the actress who plays Madame Cavaria or whatever. She's nice in this. I like watching this version of Amy figure out who Rory is. Let's have lunch and get a drink and then get married. That's funny. I mean, the ending is kind of weird with him marrying River Song. I find I don't like when the Doctor is in relationships. I like how Classic Who did it, the whole asexual relationship. They're just platonic companions. I like that. So this whole thing with him and River, I never really got it. It's just messy. I love the fact it's got the guy who plays Churchill in it. I like him as Churchill a lot. So I love that beginning part of the story. It's interesting, the concept of all of time happening at once and the time always being the same. but since they're part of that universe, they don't understand what's wrong, even though they know something's wrong. That's a fascinating concept that's not executed well here. That's the problem, is this story has a lot of ideas, and it doesn't execute them properly. Again, just messy and all over the place. If you don't believe me, ask Mumra. Even Mumra will tell you it's messy and all over the place. He just doesn't feel like talking today, apparently. Next on the list is the Subaru Conundrum. This episode has strong points about it. First off, the pating is terrible, though. The design of it, they're really going for a Baby Yoda thing here, aren't they? The design is awful. It looks silly. I can't take it seriously. I feel like if you had made it something scary, you could have gotten a horror vibe out of this, but they don't go that route at all. I love the set design, though. The set design in this is really good. I like the one doctor that's there at the beginning that's kind of has a bent, the male doctor, I'm just going to say because it's the quickest way to describe him, because he has a nice banter with the doctor. I love the way they talk to each other. She's like, yeah, I'm not too big on letting other people take command. And he's like, yeah, I'm getting that. I like that. They have a nice banter between them that I love. So it sucks he dies so early because I would like to see more of him. Now, the kind of female doctor, not our female doctor, but the other female doctor, she's all right too. I like her in this a lot. She comes across less sure of herself, but she's fine. I love the guy playing the robot. I don't really get into the brother and sister as much, especially the sister. I don't buy her. There's this one scene where she's like, right on, bro, or okay, bro. I don't get into that. And of course she dies right as she's piloting the ship because tropey and plot convenience. The guy playing the brother is okay, I guess, but I like the set design. I like the fact Yaz actually calls Whitaker out on some of this, because Yaz isn't, two-dimensional lovesick puppy lovesick Yaz yet. So she's actually calling the Dr. Alistair. Are you sure this is going to work? Are you positive about this? And that one scene when the doctor is like getting way too excited talking about the engineering of the ship. She's like, and the Yaz is like, we get it. We get it. Because the audience, this is where Yaz really is the entry point for the audience. Because we as the audience are sitting here going, we get it. We get it. So good on Yaz for that. And again, I like the set design. Next on the list is Flux. I'm just doing Flux as one story because it's really hard to break them into separate episodes for me. Flux is like in the middle. I mean, parts of it are really bad. Parts of it are really stupid. Parts of it are good. And 2 of the 6 episodes would have made great standalone episodes. The War of the Suntarans and the Village of the Angels would have made phenomenally good standalone episodes. Those are still strong episodes at points. I love the Suntaran design. I love the fact they look more like the vintage Suntarans. I love them being in the past like that. I love the line about when the one Suntaran's like, I wanted to ride a horse. I'll admit, that's funny in a good way, which the Suntarans aren't always in Modern Who. That works, while still making the Suntarans feel like a threat. They really feel like Suntarans, which I like. The Doctor, of course, has her questionable morality in it, when she's fine with murdering lots of people and then gets on to the one human guy about it, like, humans, blah, 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 blah. But then, of course, she murders, like, a whole bunch of Daleks and Cybermen at the end. This 13th Doctor has very questionable morals. Village of the Angels is very strong. I love the setting. I love the camera work. I think it's directed very well. I love it being mostly at nighttime. That's very much to the Angels' favor. It plays to the Angels' strengths. Jericho is a great character. The actor playing him is a great actor. I love that shot when Jericho gets a little bit of dust in his eye and transported into the past, the way the camera's in. That's wonderful directing. My biggest problem is tying Flux into these episodes hurts them. Tying Flux into Village of the Angels really hurts, especially the ending. The ending to that episode is dumb, with the Doctor changing into an angel. First off, the CGI of it happening looks crap. It looks atrociously bad. And then just to find out in the next episode, it was a taxi service. The Angels were literally a taxi service. You get that whole build-up, that wonderful conclusion, which isn't really a wonderful conclusion, but let's say it's a wonderful conclusion. And then in the next episode, she's just, oh, they brought you to me. The whole Tectayun thing, yeah, I couldn't see that coming 50 miles away. I mean, most people probably didn't guess it, but once you see it, you're like, oh, yeah, all right, whatever. Azure and Skeletor never really felt like proper villains. Like, they're talked up to be. Like, the marketing talked them up like major villains. The first episode really talks them up like major villains. You know, we danced among the universe and the stars together. Like, this is the biggest bad the Doctor's ever fought, and it goes nowhere. 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 The makeup on them is fine, and the actors are doing fine. It's just, there's nothing there to these characters. They become very uninteresting very quickly. And then they just ascend at the end. Flux just isn't that great. Now, I did like the Grand Serpent, and the actor playing the Grand Serpent is cool. Again, I thought he got defeated a little easily, but I liked him. It also explains why Kate's been gone for a little bit. And then the scene when the Grand Serpent is attempting to interrogate the Doctor is phenomenal. It's one of Whittaker's best performances in the role. She is phenomenally good in that scene. I will give her that. When she's not, like, taking in. She really does take control of that situation, which is hard to do with someone like the Grand Serpent, you can tell. So good on her for that in that scene. Episode 1, I don't really care for. Episode 3, I don't really care for. Episode 5, I like. And episode 6, I don't really care for. Episode 5, though, I loved watching Yaz and Dan and Jericho just traveling together. I would have loved a spin-off series just of them traveling together in the past. I love those scenes. The action ones, the humorous ones, I love those scenes. So it's very much, you know, is it a thumbs up or a thumbs down? It's, you know, that's Flux. It's got some good stuff, it's got some bad stuff, so ultimately it's that. Next on the list is New Earth, which is another story I tend to be kinder to fresh off a rewatch. Right when I've watched it, I tend to have more of an appreciation for it. It's not a bad story. It's not a very interesting story. It's not the best first story for a new Doctor, you know, not counting the Christmas Invasion, but his first kind of full story where he's up and moving. It's not bad. It's nice that they bring Lady Cassandra, or whatever her name is, back. Her ending is really good at the end when she's in the other servant's body, and how she talks to her past. So that's a touching little ending. She kind of went out, I think, the way she wanted. Watching David Tennant and Billie Piper having to act like her character, Lady Cassandra, is great acting on both their parts. They both play her really well, and that's a very humorous bit. Some of the music in it's nice. I love watching Tennant sliding down the little elevator cable. That's pretty neat. I love their different reactions when going through the elevator for the first time, when it's like cleansing them and all that, and she's kind of, and he's just, it's pretty funny. Tennant seems to have slipped into the role pretty easily. I mean, he really comes into his own with season 3, but I think he had a pretty good grasp on the role initially. Even if his hair is not quite perfect yet. But the ending seems a little contrived with him just mixing the stuff together and that cures everything. Like, seems a little stretched, but it's Doctor Who. I'll let it go. I have more of an appreciation for New Earth than I used to. New Doctor, like we have right now. Next on the list is Name of the Doctor. Name of the Doctor is this high mainly because it has one of the best beginnings in all of Doctor Who. I love the intro to this story, with Clara interacting with all the past Doctors and that epic music playing. I mean, the first time I saw this episode, my jaw was like on the floor. When I'm seeing 4 and 5 and 2 and 8's in there too. It's easy to miss him, but he's there. And 3. And recognizing the episodes the shots are from, you know, 5 Doctors, you know, Arc of Infinity. I love that. I love that opening. It's such a good opening. And then the amazing ending with the reveal of John Hurt, because it's John Hurt. First off, an unknown incarnation of the Doctor, and originally, of course, trying to figure out where he fit in the timeline, because it was about 6 months between this episode and Day of the Doctor, so we had a little bit of, where does he go? You know, it was between 8 and 9, pre-Hartnell, between 2 and 3. There was a lot of that, and it's John Hurt. It was a great cliffhanger and a great way to lead into Day of the Doctor, or really lead into Night of the Doctor in a way. All the stuff in the middle is just kind of, I never really got into the Ponstanatter gang that much, to be honest. They're okay, but I never really got into them. I love Richard E. Grant as the Great Intelligence. He is great as that. I like him just as an actor in general. He's great in that. But overall, everything between the intro and the ending is mostly filler for me. That's why it ranks this low. Next on the list is the Pandorica Opens and the Big Bang. I like the use this story, Stephen Moffat is really good at remembering that the Doctor is a time traveler and playing with that. Sometimes to good effect, sometimes not. He uses it really well here with timey-wimey shenanigans I like. I like the fake out about how Rory's back and with it tying into Autons. That's a cool callback. I like how it's done. Blew my mind the first time I saw it. I love when he gives the speech that makes the alien ships back off. And you, up there with your tiny little spaceships with all your tiny little guns, or whatever he says. I love all of that. Just remember, do the smart thing. Let someone else try first. That ought to get me half an hour. I love that. That's a great speech. The mystery of the Pandorica is a great mystery. And then in part 2, wondering, how did Amy get in there? And seeing him doing all the timey-wimey shenanigans, I really enjoy. Yeah, some people might call it a little overstuffed, but I liked it. I thought it ended well. It's really weird at the end how he has to make her forget him, and he steps through the crack and stays, but then she remembers him and it brings him back. Yeah, the ending's a little weird for me. That one, someone needs to just walk me through that one. Okay. And how it kind of ties back in with Time of the Angels with him talking to her. Explains why he still has the jacket on. People thought that was an error at first. Clever. But I like it, even though a little bit of it is janky. Let's say that. Other than that, I enjoy it. Next on the list is Resolution. I talked about that recently, ranking the Whittaker era. Resolution does a good job of making the Daleks scary again, which they hadn't been in a while. Moffat didn't use the Daleks well. It gives them a new ability, but explains why they can have that. This is a recon Dalek, so it's neat that this kind of Dalek can possess people that way. And a lot of the praise needs to be heaped on the actress playing the girl that's possessed by the Dalek. She does a really good job of playing that, especially in scenes when she's almost having a conversation with herself with the body language and the way she's twitching and moving and laughing. Major props to her. She does a good acting performance there. The Dalek really feels threatening in this. Now, it doesn't all land. The stuff with Ryan's dad's kind of, Although I do love when Graham opens the door and sees him. It's just like, no, and shuts the door. That's hilarious. The bit at the end with the microwaves melting the Dalek is a little, really? You figured the Dalek could have shot them as it went around the compound? Willing suspension of disbelief. Willing suspension of disbelief. And of course, it gets on Ryan's dad. Of course it does. I do have to say, I love the scene when the Dalek is taking on the military, though, and it just waxes them. That's such a cool scene when the Dalek... It, again, proves just how deadly one Dalek can be. Even just in makeshift armor, how deadly it can be. When it's sitting there, boom, 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 boom. And then I love when it fights the tank, and the tank fires its, big cannon, and then the Dalek fires its little missile. In that almost comical way, the little missile hits the big tank missile and knocks it out of the way. It's like, it's almost done in this Looney Tunes style, but it works. It's hilarious, while also you're like, wow, don't screw with that Dalek. I love that scene so much. This one's not ranked higher, because despite everything I like about it, which is a lot, I don't go back and rewatch it. It's weird, because how sometimes you have those Doctor Who stories, they might not be masterpieces, but you love to go back and watch them. Horns of Nimon, Destiny of the Daleks. This one's kind of the opposite. I think it's a really well-made episode, a really good script, but for some reason it doesn't have a strong rewatchability to it. I don't know why. I never had that urge to go back and rewatch it while very much appreciating what it is. And appreciating what it is why it ranks this high, but the fact I never had the desire to go watch it again is why it ranks this low, if that makes sense. And next on the list is Closing Time. This one is this high mainly just because I always love the 11th Doctor with Craig. They're hilarious together. James Corden and Matt Smith have good, humorous chemistry together in both of their episodes. And while I like the Lodger better, Closing Time, just the rapport between them is so funny that I enjoy it. I like the opening of the episode, too. The opening bit with the woman in the shop investigating and hearing her scream at the end. That's a great opening bit to lead into the episode. Very chilling and scary. The episode doesn't live up to it, but it's still pretty neat. We get to see the Cybermat back. I like seeing the Cybermat back. The ending is cringy with the, we beat him with love, Alfie. We beat him with love. It's cringy. It's really, really cringy. That does kind of detract for a little bit, and that's what pulls it down to this level where it's ranked where it's at, is the ending doesn't work for me. But the humorous bits with the Doctor and Craig are great. I like when the one woman at the store thinks they're a gay couple. And I recognize her. I believe that's Linda Bellingham or whatever her name is. Of course, from Earthshock and Ballad of Johnny Ringo. I think that's her. And how Craig's just kind of going along with it. And he's like, I forget what he says, but while Matt's running around, he's just kind of talking about it. It's really funny. It's a really funny episode. If you want something lighthearted, I enjoyed that. Next on the list is The Doctor's Daughter. I never got into this one a lot. It's got some neat stuff going on in it. Georgia Moffat is great playing the Doctor's daughter. Especially looking back on it now with her being married to David Tennant, with her actually being Peter Davison's daughter. It's wonderful casting. I like the dynamic between her and the Doctor in it. I love him not really being able to accept her and Donna making him come around. The whole conversation when she like has the stethoscope and she's like, listen, and he hears the two hearts. And then he's talking about how the difference between him and her is, I'm trying to stop the fighting. And she's like, isn't every soldier? It has some really good moments in there. I'd love to see Jenny come back sometime in the show, actually. Plus, it also has the guy who played King Arthur in 1981's Excalibur, and I like him a lot. He's my favorite version of King Arthur. That's also my favorite version of Merlin. And so the fact that it has Nigel in it, it gets bonus points for that as well. And I like the hat. I like the design of the hat as well. And the revelation that it had all been only going on a week when it seems like a lot longer. That's it's pretty neat. It's actually a lot of neat stuff going on in this one. But despite all of that, much like Resolution, I just don't go back to it a lot for some reason. I've seen it several times. I have rewatched it probably 4, 5, 6 times. Just maybe because I watched Tenet so much back in the day. Like so much, because I was a really big Tenet fan for a long time. He was my solid number 2 behind Tom for a long time. So I watched the Tenet era a lot back in the day that I just don't go back to it as much now. Next on the list, sticking with Series 4, is the Sontaran Experiment. No, that's not right. Let's try that again. Next on the list, sticking with Series 4, I'm going to leave that blooper in. I'm so leaving that blooper in. Is the Sontaran Stratagem and the Poison Sky. This one was originally higher on the list, but I realized that while I enjoy this one, I don't really enjoy this. It's fun. I think it's great having Freema back as Martha. Martha's had some nice character growth here. Watching her play not only Martha, but of course the doppelganger of Martha is really neat. It's nice seeing the Sontarans come back. I think they're actually pretty good in this story. I never got into the blue armor, I'll be honest. But they hadn't become the kind of comedic slapstick comedy they would become later. They're pretty good in this one. The kid that's the one who created the Atmos setup, the actor playing him does a good job. Once again, the ending, I talked about this earlier, has that whole bit where Tennant's like gonna blow them all up, and he's like, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. And then the kid has to teleport in and do it for him. It's like the Doctor was just waiting for someone to say, no, Doctor, the universe needs you. Let me sacrifice myself for you. And the Doctor could be like, Well, okay, you talked me into it. So every time he's over there going, I'll do it, I'm still over there going, sure you will. I was sad that we didn't get the Brigadier in it. The guy who's kind of like the Brigadier in it is fine, but I wish we'd gotten the Brigadier in it, even though I do love that we get a mention of him and that he's stranded in Peru. I love the running joke before Nicholas Courtney passed that the Brigadier was always stranded in Peru. That's kind of funny. I would have liked to have had Nicholas Courtney in this episode, though. I also liked the unit soldier that was traveling with him a while. He ended up getting killed in the episode, which I didn't like. But the little younger unit soldier that was with him, I enjoyed that. It's an enjoyable episode, but again, just not one that's truly memorable to me. Next on the list, and we're still sticking with Series 4, is Planet of the Ood. This is one I used to like a lot more than I like. The guy playing the businessman, the balding businessman, the actor playing him, does a good job because you just hate this guy. He is that corporate businessman type that you just love to hate, and the actor playing him conveys that perfectly. We get nice foreshadowing with the Dr. Donna. What happens with the businessman guy at the end is nice poetic justice. I enjoy that. Part of my problem with this one is maybe I just don't like the Ood. I've never liked their design. I've just never been a big fan of their design, I'll be honest. It's never impressed me. The Ood, I just have very little interest in. I prefer the Sensorites. They're cooler. So I don't know why this one just doesn't grab me the way it used to. More and more, as while I think Series 4 is really good, I still think it's a bit overrated. And next on the list is Aliens in London and World War III, which is the first appearance of the 9th Doctor on the list. So for some reason right now, this is my least favorite 9th Doctor story. I like it. The guy playing the Vice Prime Minister, I guess is what it's called, is good. The one that's actually an alien. I like the actor playing him. Of course, the woman Slitheen, the one that also comes back in Boomtown, she's great. I really like her a lot. I enjoy the story. I like the Slitheen design. It's kind of a callback to classic Doctor Who. I like here in Series 1, we have a monster that looks a little silly, but I feel like harkens back to classic Who. It's a nice little homage there for me. I enjoyed the story. I like getting Jackie and Mickey mixed into the story. That works really well. The whole thing about Rexicorcophallopatorius, I love the running joke of that being hard to say. Rexicorcophallopatorius. I like that. I like Eccleston a lot in this. I like Harriet Jones and the realization of who she is at the beginning. They kind of undo that later, but it's cool here in this episode. It's a two-parter that deserves to be a two-parter. I actually like the cliffhanger to part 1 and how it resolves well at the beginning of part 2. I actually feel like part 2 lives up to part 1, which isn't always the case. And I find the story very enjoyable. I love the bit when he's trying to narrow down what planet they're from. When they're feeding him all these facts and he narrows it down. Rexicorcophallopatorius. I love that. I absolutely love that. It's a good episode. For some reason, it's not, again, I've seen it probably half a dozen times, but just in the past 10 years, I don't know if I've watched it once, except, well, once or twice probably when I was showing it to someone I was dating. Other than that, I haven't gone back just because I was like, I feel like watching that. And that's the reason why it's not any higher. Next on the list is The Idiot's Lantern. I like this one, I think, more than most. Is it essential watching? No. It's that one you go back to and watch every few years. But I liked my last watch through of it a lot. I liked the scene when the Doctor's being interrogated by the police and how by the end of it he's turned the interrogation around on them. And he's basically interrogating them like he's up out of his chair and they're in their chairs. I do love that. I do love how he does that. It's cast well. The bit with the blank faces always look weird to me. Like when you see them and their face is just blank, that looks weird to me. The woman playing the Wire, she's really good. the cast in general, even the dad, who's the very not a good dad, the very old-fashioned dad, is cast well. He plays his part well. And I like watching the mom of the story kind of develop a backbone and put him out of the house by the end of it. I actually enjoy that as well. But while his son, of course, still loves him because that's his dad. I enjoy this one. It's another one of those you go back and rewatch it every blue moon when you're like, hey, I haven't watched The Idiot's Lantern in a while. I need to go see that again. Next on the list, I didn't realize we had so many tenants in a row here, is Smith & Jones, which, of course, started Series 3, which is interesting. I think this is the first appearance of Series 3 on the list, and this usually isn't the one I call the weakest of Series 3. So it's interesting that it is, I guess, considered the weakest for the moment for me. Great introduction to Martha. I really like Martha a lot as a companion. I love the idea of the whole hospital being taken to the moon by the Jadoon. A plume of Jadoon on the moon. I love that. I love the fact that one of the reasons they wrote this episode is because they found out Tennant had a hard time saying the oon sound in his English accent. So of course, they wrote a story where he had to say a platoon of Jadoon on the moon. I love that. It's fun. The old lady is cast well. I don't know why I don't have this one higher. It's just not as memorable for me, honestly, as much as I enjoy it. It's, again, not one I just go back to a lot. I watch it every blue moon. It's kind of why it falls this low. It's just not one I'm like, I need to go watch Smith & Jones again. That never really happens. It's just, yeah, I'll watch Smith & Jones again. Why not? Even though it's a good introduction to Martha. Next on the list is The Long Game. This is usually the one I call the weakest of Eccleston's era. I still like it more than most. I like it more for a couple of the things it does, more than the actual episode, the story. The story is fine. Nothing to write home about, but fine. But one, it shows us the fact that not everyone can be a companion to the Doctor. That it shows us kind of a failed companion. Keeping in mind, Eccleston's not the one that decided to take Adam. Rose was the one that decided to take Adam, and the Doctor just let it slide, which goes to show the Doctor is actually very good at picking his companions, and that he just doesn't necessarily do it on as much of a whim as much as we think. The guy playing Adam, by the way, is really good. The one girl in there that also has the thing in her head that's helping them a lot of the episode, she's also really good. And then it's nice seeing Simon Pegg in this. He's good. The little actual editor-in-chief thing's not much to write home about, but that's okay. I also like that the events of this episode set up the finale, and it's another example of the problems that arise when the Doctor doesn't clean up his messes. The fact he doesn't stick around to help sort things, he just leaves thinking everything will be all right, sets up the finale, which ultimately causes him to have to regenerate. So it's once again the Doctor creating his own problems inadvertently, and I like that. Next on the list is The Runaway Bride. I really like this one. I don't know why it's not any higher. It's just not as memorable for me, I guess. But Catherine Tate really got my attention very quickly as Donna. She's a great companion. She's my favorite Modern Who companion. I like her sass. I like her snarky nature. I love how well her and Tennant bounce off each other. The bit when he's having to fly the TARDIS, like, on the highway, and nobody's there, like... Of course, this is right around when the iPhone was coming out, but still, that's pretty cool. You figured somebody would be talking about it. The makeup on the Rachnos, or whatever they're called, the Rachnos Queen, is really impressive. The actress playing her is also very good, playing that part, but the makeup on her looks really good. I enjoy it. I like the fact that Donna's fiance turns out to be in on it, and even he's like, I can't stand putting up with you, and to promise to marry you, that's... I mean, it's sad for Donna, but it's kind of funny in a way, too. The way the actor playing the guy does the delivery makes it funny, if that makes sense. So it's a nice introduction to Donna, but again, not one I go back to as much as I used to. On the list, I'm kind of surprised it's this high, is The Magician's Apprentice and the Witch's Familiar. I talked about this episode so many times. It's my least favorite Dalek story. Typically. So why it's ranking higher than some of the other Dalek stories, don't ask me. Because when I'm ranking Dalek stories, this one's at the bottom. Owen Capaldi is great. Michelle Gomez is great. Jenna Coleman is great. Everyone is great playing their characters. Let me get that across there. Peter Capaldi is always amazing. I feel like Missy doesn't need to be in this episode. The conversations between her and Clara are interesting. They are interesting. But from a narrative standpoint, don't make sense. Putting Clara in the Dalek seems kind of uninteresting. The whole thing about they say exterminate to reload. The fact that if they try to say something like I love you, it comes out as kill, kill, kill or whatever. I don't really buy that. I just, The bits at the beginning with Missy, oh, Missy, you're so fine, the plane stopping. The doctor riding in on a tank. But then it has some nice moments. The cliffhanger when they realize they're on Skaro is pretty cool. Seeing some of the older Daleks is pretty cool. The reveal at the very beginning of the episode that the kid is Davros is really neat. I didn't see that coming. And there's so much you could have done with that that's not done with that. But it's still a neat opening. The look on Capaldi's face and when you just see he's left, that's pretty interesting. And how that's kind of haunting him still now. Some of the conversations between the Doctor and Davros in this episode are really good. They're performed very well by Peter and by Julian. Julian's putting in a good performance. My second favorite Davros after Michael Wisher. And if they had really leaned into that and made it genuine, this would be a phenomenal episode. The fact that they ruin it all by just making it a cop-out trick by Davros really, really lets this episode down and makes it disappointing, and I'm surprised I have this ranked so high. Because there's so many other ways you could have brought Davros back. I get they don't want to kill Davros off. They want him to always be able to come back. But, I mean, you could have had the Doctor run into him at an earlier point in his time stream. You could have cloned Davros and brought him back. You could have actually let Davros die here, made the conversations between him and the Doctor genuine. It would have had a much more emotional impact. Because I love the conversation they have, talking about their people and the little laugh they share about, you are not a very good doctor. I love that scene so much. Just to almost see them bonding in a way after everything they've been through together. I love that. And to realize it's all just a cop-out really cheapens it. And then the whole bit at the end about regenerating the Daleks also regenerates all the sewer Daleks, which flood them. And Davros wouldn't have thought of that. It's just, they're Daleks coming out of the sewer. How appropriate, because it's a bunch of crap. Next on the list is Curse of the Black Spot. I enjoyed this one. This is another one of those, it's not essential Doctor Who, not essential viewing, but it's good to go back and revisit it once every 7 or 8 years. I think it's cast well. I like the captain of the ship. The woman playing the siren creature, she's quite stunning. I'm sure she's a model. And the effects they do for her are quite well done. And I enjoy how the story resolves and what's actually going on and how I like when Doctor Who can take something that's kind of mystical or fantasy or fairy tale and give a science reason behind it. Also kind of like Mummy on the Orient Express does. I like when Doctor Who makes that work, and it makes it work in this episode really well. Also, the guy playing the captain of the ship is really, really good. So I enjoy this one. Not essential Who, but I think much better than people give it credit for. Next on the list is The Waters of Mars, which I have talked about before. It is a story that, for some reason, I just don't quite love as much as I should. because it's got a lot of really good parts into it, but the sum of those parts never really add up for me completely. It's a good performances all around. It's a neat concept on Mars with the flood. It's executed and directed well. I believe Graham Harper directed this episode, the only director to ever direct for classic and modern Who. It's directed very well. And I enjoy the story. I like the callback to the Ice Warriors, who had not been in the modern series at that time. So I love the name drop of the Ice Warriors. Tennant is putting in a good performance. I love the kind of bond he forms with Lindsay Duncan. I love the ending of the episode when he does go full Time Lord victorious. That is a cool moment. The scene when he just embraces that and then gets them to Earth just to realize he's gone too far. The conversation he has with Lindsay Duncan there at the end, when she's like, you shouldn't have this power. And he's like, tough. You can't do this. That's for me to decide. And her having to take the action she has to take afterwards, and for him to realize he's gone too far. It's a great ending. Even has some nice humorous bits in it. Great makeup, by the way. The zombies look convincing. I just, for some reason, maybe it's just because, it's weird because I wasn't even burned out on zombies at that point. Just for some reason, this one doesn't hold up for me. It's not one even though I've watched it half a dozen times, I never want to go back and watch it. It's my least favorite of the Tennant specials. Just for some reason, I can't put my hand on, my finger on. Honestly, I'm not even sure why. I just don't like to go back to this one as much as I do a lot of other episodes, even though it's objectively well made. It just doesn't work for me. It's just one of those. I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about. That's just how it is for me. Next on the list is Into the Dalek. Peter Capaldi. I like Rusty. I like the idea of a good Dalek that hates other Daleks and wants to go around exterminating them, and the Doctor wanting to know why. It's very much kind of a Fantastic Journey thing, of course, when they shrink themselves down and go into the Dalek. That's pretty neat. I wouldn't have thought of that. And I love the bit at the end when the Dalek is just going off on all the other Daleks. Blah, 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 rapid fire. Blah, 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 blah. You're not used to seeing that. That's pretty cool. The bit at the end when the soldier wants to come with him and he's like, and it would be great if you weren't a soldier. Again, I never get into this weird thing with Capaldi in the military. I don't understand that at all. So I feel kind of bad for the girl because she's a soldier, he's like, eh. Again, just not overly memorable. It's a good episode. It's not a great episode, but it's good. I like it. Another one of those I like to go back and watch every blue moon when I get in the mood for it. Next on the list is Hellbent, which, after the episode that preceded it, is so much of a letdown. It's not utter crap like some people think it is. It has nice stuff in it. But it's definitely a letdown after Heaven Sent. The guy playing Rassilon, we're going to call him not Timothy Dalton, is a bit of a letdown. I get Timothy Dalton wasn't available. But it's hard to go from Timothy Dalton to generic old guy. And I know that guy, I believe, is also a Classic Who alum, and I love when they sneak them in. But I just don't feel that gravitas in Rassilon. I'm just like, that's Rassilon? Okay. And the fact they get him to leave the planet that easily. I never liked the Doctor being in command of, like, Gallifrey like that. I much prefer, like, the Doctor being terrified of the Time Lords and wanting to avoid them, much like the second Doctor in the War Games. Him not wanting to piss off the Time Lords because he's scared of them. That makes more sense than him when he's just slamming doors in their faces. I mean, they kind of owe him because he saved them. I get that. But I never liked that dynamic. Bringing Clara back. Clara getting her own TARDIS, her own companion, her own practical immortality and long life like the Doctor has. We even get the name drop Clara Who in it. He literally says Clara Who. I feel like Steve Moffat was literally trolling us. Like the fans who were pissed off about how the show had become Clara Who, he was literally doing that to screw with us as a big middle finger. That you see both the TARDISes flying off at the end, and she's got her own companion. But it does have good moments in it. I mean, you can tell he cares about Clara and that he's trying to save her, and that's very much the Doctor. I like the fact it brings the General back from Day of the Doctor. I like him a lot. It brings back the woman from the Night of the Doctor short. I like her. The bit about the time race is interesting. I kind of wonder if that's what happens to people who try to claim immortality from Barusa. They become the time race. Not Barusa, but from Rassilon, like with Barusa, become time race. That's a neat little fan theory. So it has good stuff going on in it. But it doesn't outweigh all the bad stuff going on in it. Next on the list is 42, which is usually the one I consider to be the weakest of Series 3, while still being good. I like 42 well enough. It's engaging enough. I can go back and rewatch it. The cast is fine. I know one of the girls that gets killed kind of early on, I felt bad for her. Her and the Doctor already felt like they had a really nice rapport kind of going, and then she gets killed early on. I'm like, aw. The bits when even the Doctor is affected and having to fight it, the fact that it can even affect him is pretty neat. I love the fact they set up all the quiz questions one night when they were really, really drunk. That just sounds like blue-collar workers in that situation, and I love it. So they're having to randomly remember all the answers to get through all. That's funny to me. Yeah, I enjoyed this one. Not super memorable, not essential watching, but it's really good. Series 3 is such a strong series, and this is definitely, even though it's possibly the weakest in Smith and Jones, it's still a good episode. Next on the list is Nightmare in Silver, which is underrated. It's not the best. It's definitely not up there with classic Who Cybermen stories, to be fair, but it's still fine. I mean, the upgrade and progress stuff kind of gets annoying, but I do enjoy the new Cybermen design well enough. Interesting to see some of the soldiers getting taken out by the Cybermen. The bit when the one guy who kind of runs the place, when the Cybermen won't let him go and you see the things crawling up him, it's almost like the Borg assimilating somebody. That's kind of neat. The kids are a bit annoying in it. Let's just be honest on that. It's nice having, my mind just went blank. Wow, my mind just went blank. Willow. It's nice having Willow in it. I like him a lot just as an actor. Or Wicket, whichever one you want to call him, from Return of the Jedi. It's nice having him in the episode. I like his character. I enjoy it well enough. I love Matt Smith's performance because he's having to play the Doctor and Mr. Clever. And I actually like that bit. I know some people don't, but I actually enjoy all the Mr. Clever stuff. I think it's neat. I think it's good acting. I like them fighting over the last part of the control of his mind for who gets control of it total. Almost like someone trying to resist assimilation. That's pretty cool for me. I like that a lot. I think Matt Smith does a great performance there. I enjoyed the end of it. I like this one more than most. It's not as fresh on my mind. I remember praising a lot of it on my last review of it a while back. It's better than it's given credit. And next on the list is Extremis. Extremis is on the list more because I love the idea of Extremis. The idea that a lot of the episode takes place in a digital world, and it's not the world we think it is. I like that because I didn't see it coming the first time. I mean, you see some of the people in the digital world realizing they're not real. That's pretty neat. And explains like people like the president have dealt with it the way they have because they realize they're not real. They're living in a simulation. So you wonder everything that's going on just to find out that these characters we've been watching most of the episode are not the characters we think they are. And how the Capaldi that's in the simulation, the Doctor in the simulation, does what everyone does, call the Doctor and sends it to him. That's pretty cool. I didn't see that coming. It kind of reminds me of the Android Invasion a bit. Now, of course, they're not the same thing, but they kind of remind me of each other. Like, The Android Invasion is the analog version, and Extremis is the digital version, the 21st century version of it. They always remind me of each other a bit with replicas in them the way they are. I usually think of one, I think of the other. Not necessarily every time, but one kind of makes me think of the other. But the story itself is fine. I need to go back and actually rewatch Extremis. It's a shame it's the first part of 3, because as a standalone episode, I find it pretty neat. So it's really that idea of it that lets it rank this high. Next on the list is The Church on Ruby Road, Ncuti Gatwa's first episode. I don't know if this one will rise or fall. Again, it's really hard to judge it because we don't have hindsight to look back on it yet. You know, it's the only story we've gotten with Ncuti, the only full story. It's the only story we've gotten with Ruby, and we're still figuring them out. We're still figuring out their doctor. We're still figuring out the new companion. So who knows how this one will shift on the list. But I liked the episode a lot. As I said in my review, it did feel like Doctor Who. While the musical felt a little out of place for Doctor Who, it at least kind of fits with the fantasy nature of the story with the goblins. And I agree with another reviewer that they're more like gremlins. It might have been Vera from Council of Geeks points out that they're more like gremlins, which of course makes me think of that Twilight Zone episode. Was it Nightmare at 20,000 Feet with William Shatner? Because they do seem more like gremlins in a way. But Ncuti Gatwa's putting in a great performance. He really did feel like the Doctor to me. It's interesting that I connected with him kind of as quickly as I did. I love first Doctor story, or I love a Doctor's first story where they're on the move. I don't know if I think of this as a post-regeneration story, really. Seems like it probably might take place a little after the events of the Giggle, where he's kind of figured out who he is. But I love when a Doctor's first episode is they're moving a lot, which he is here. Haven't made up my mind on Ruby yet. I'm not really familiar with Millie Gibson. I think I'm going to need some more episodes with her to decide on her. But I liked the story. I liked the Doctor, and it has me excited to see what the new season of the show is going to be like. Next on the list is Father's Day. I don't quite get into this one as much as other people. I used to. I just don't go back to it as much. The guy playing Rose's dad, by the way, is great. The CGI on it has aged badly. The little flying bat things, creatures. Again, I'm a lot more forgiving of aging practical effects than I am aging CGI effects. Like, most of the effects in Classic Who don't bother me. My willing suspension of disbelief can handle most of classic Doctor Who. Occasionally I see something where even I'm like, like the main creature in the Web Planet. But I have some issues with some of early modern Who with the CGI looking bad. And this is definitely a case where it's a little rough. I like the episode. I like the fact it's, Eccleston, I swear maybe halfway through he gets kind of taken out of the episode. And they have to carry on without him. It's nice as a kind of semi-Dr. Light episode, and that they have to figure out a resolution of things behind him, and ultimately that it is Rose's dad who saves the day knowing what has to happen. It's a good episode. It's an emotional episode. It's a very family-felt episode. A lot of emotional impact that I like. Just for some reason, I don't go back to it as much as I used to. Next on the list is the Doctor's wife, which of course we get to see the TARDIS in human form. And by the way, the actress playing her is fantastic. The actress playing the TARDIS, she's great. I love how well this one is directed. I like the story, but I love how well this one is directed. Just the cinematography is really good on it. The use of lighting and shadows really good on it. Good performances from everyone, the main cast, the guest cast. I think this is the first time it mentions a Time Lord being able to change gender when they regenerate. In the show proper, I think Sarah Jane Adventures had already mentioned it in Death of the Doctor. But I think it's the first time in the show proper where it mentions Time Lords being able to switch genders when he talks about the Corsair, which is pretty neat. I like the person who voices House a lot. That's a really cool voice. I really was impressed with it. It's nice that we get to see other bits of the TARDIS in this. That's pretty neat. And how House screws with Amy and Rory is pretty scary and neat. I mean, it's cool, but it's also terrifying. The use of lighting in this episode is really key. It really is. With a lot of the darks and the hues and the shadows and the use of green light at times. It's really, really good. And then watching how Matt and the human version of the TARDIS interact is great. I love some of the humor. What do I call you? Sexy. You call me sexy. Only when we're alone. I love that. Them having to build the makeshift TARDIS, which looks kind of like a classic TARDIS. I love that. To catch up to the TARDIS. How the Doctor tricks House into teleporting them into the main console room. And the ending when he's like, what have you got for me this time? And the TARDIS kind of goes off without him and he smiles about it. It's an emotional episode that's written well, directed well, and cast well. Again, I just haven't had the urge to go back and rewatch it in a while. Next on the list is the Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks. This is an underrated one. Now, I used to like it more than I do. I still enjoy it. It's nice having Andrew Garfield in Doctor Who. I never really cared about the stuff going on with Laszlo and the girl. Feels kind of like filler for me. But I enjoy that it's set in the Depression, which is an odd thing to say, but I like that. It's neat. It appeals to me being set in the 30s like that while they're building the Empire State Building. I feel like for a British show, it actually does the American Depression pretty well, actually. The guy who runs the camp, the one that gets killed by the Daleks, I like him. My hat's off to the actor playing him. He does a really good job. The guy playing the guy who later becomes Dalek Sec, him in his human form and him when he's playing Dalek Sec, the human Dalek Sec, I'm assuming it's the same actor. He does a good job with both of those. I like the idea of the story and the Cult of Skaro thinking outside the box, doing things Daleks would never do, and how that thinking outside the box is what caused the other Daleks to betray Dalek Sec. That's just the Daleks' nature. That feels exactly like what would happen. So it feels like the events of the story play out exactly the way they should when it comes to the Daleks. Now, it's a little rough in places like the human Dalek hybrids, and then the Doctor getting struck by the lightning mixes Time Lord DNA in with it. Okay, willing suspension of disbelief. But overall, it's a nice episode. It's got some nice moments in it. I love when the Doctor is talking about Davros and say, well, your creator thought this, and Dalek Sec's like, he was wrong. I'm sorry, he was what? Because I'm also watching going, I'm sorry, he was what? I love Tennant's reaction to that. It's a great moment to see a Dalek actually evolve. This is not just physically the evolution of the Daleks. It's mentally how Dalek Sec evolves when he gets emotions back and how he changes as a person and evolves as a person. So really the title of the episode has double meaning, which I really like. Next on the list is Smile. Who would have thought an emoji episode would work for Doctor Who? But it does. I enjoy this episode. I love the reveal that the whole city is like built out of the nanites. So the whole city can kind of turn into a death trap. And learning that you have to stay happy or they kill you, because a computer only knows what you tell it. It can't make those critical decisions to differentiate between things. It only knows what it's told. And we've seen that in science fiction many times where that creates problems because a computer can't make those critical distinctions that people can. The same problem with The Fly, with the machine merging Jeff Goldblum, Seth Brundle, with The Fly in it simply because the computer wasn't programmed for two things to be in there. And it didn't know what to do, so it just did what it was programmed to do. You've run into that here where somebody died, everybody was sad. It didn't know what to do, so it made what we would call an absurd assumption, might be the wrong word, but its path going forward, we would have been like, no! But the computer didn't know that, because it only knows what it's programmed to know. I like that here. I enjoy the performances in it well enough. It's, again, not one that's super memorable necessarily. It's definitely not essential watching, but I enjoy when I go back to it. Like, anytime I decide to go back to it, I always enjoy it, and that's why it's ranked this high. And next on the list is The Next Doctor, which of course was the first of the David Tennant specials. I actually really enjoyed this one. Its biggest problem is the ending doesn't stick. Part of it is, Morrissey is really good as a doctor, by the way. I like his doctor. He would have made such a good doctor. And I love his outfit. It has a very doctory look to it, which I like. I enjoy the rapport between him and Tennant early on when he still thinks he's the doctor. I love the back and forth between them, the camaraderie. I love just that opening shot when they're both like, Alonzi! I love that. I enjoyed the bit when they're being carried by the creature with the rope and it's dragging both of them. At the end of it, they both get up laughing. I absolutely love that. The problem is, once he realizes he's Jackson Lake, he immediately becomes a background character. Because then all he remembers is, oh, they killed my wife. They took my son. And then he just becomes uninteresting. He's more just, that's my son, save him, doctor, and oh, look, I've got my son, that's the doctor right there. He just becomes so uninteresting and becomes really just kind of part of the background after that, and that's disappointing. And then the whole bit with the ShuckleKing at the end, that's a bit over the top. First off, the ShuckleKing invention is way over the top for the time period they're in. Also, the way he stops it is so Deus Machina quick. I'll shoot it with this blasty thing and it disappears. The ending kind of pulls it down. I love stuff up to that, though. First, the female antagonist of the story, I can't remember her name, the lady Kasudala or whatever. I like her. The actress playing her does a really good job. I love the fact that she is so strong-willed that she can basically override the will of the Cybermen. I like that, how they tried to use her to become the new ShuckleKing, but once her will overrode their own, they tried to stop her and it wasn't happening. I love that. She's just cast really well. Again, Morrissey's great. Rosita is good, the actress playing Rosita. I wish she'd been given a little more to do, but she's good. I enjoyed the story a lot. I love watching Tennant try to figure out what's going on. Also, that wonderful shot when he shows Jackson Lake the info stamp of the doctor, and we actually get to see all of the previous doctors. That was really cool. It's really the first time the show did that, beating 11th Hour to the punch, but it's such a beautiful scene, you know, just seeing the previous doctors, really. The only other time we'd really seen, in any way, them was in Family of Blood with the pictures, but actually seeing the archive footage of them, my favorite shot of the whole episode. It's beautiful. So it's a good one, just doesn't stick the landing, which is why it's where it's at on the list. Next on the list is The Girl Who Waited, which is a very emotional story. I think this one is very well made. Also, I love the fact it's another planet with a name that's hard to say. Like, it's like Apalapachia or something like that. I love that. Karen Gillan really steals the show here. She does such a good job playing these two different versions of Amelia Pond, especially this older. The makeup on her when she looks older is really well done, by the way. This kind of jaded version of Amy, who's been through so much. And then watching the jaded version of Amy grow over the course of the episode as she learns to trust again, kind of to trust the doctor, to trust Rory, is nice. And then the ending is such a gut punch when he knows he can only save one Amy, so he has to lie to the other Amy. And then when he just looks at her and says, I'm sorry, and he has to leave without her, and how hard that is on him and on Amy and on Rory. It's a very emotional episode. It's really well made. I like the fact that the planet is kind of made in this simplistic style, kind of like classic Who, almost kind of like the Mind Runner. It takes a minimalist approach to a lot of the areas, which I like. I also like the robots. They have a minimalist look to them. which I can really appreciate. It's a very powerful episode. Next on the list is Sleep No More, which is this high on the list more for the ideas that it puts forth, more than the actual story. The story doesn't come together the best. It's not bad by any means. I do think it's an underrated story. I really appreciated it more on my last rewatch. So I enjoy it even from a story standpoint on its own. I still enjoy it. But the ideas of it are really good. First off, the creatures that are just the sleep in your eye. You know, I love when Doctor Who takes something ordinary and makes it terrifying. I would have never thought of the sleep in your eye accumulating to become parasitic and then eventually eat you and use you as a food source to become its own living entity. I would have never thought of that. That is a really neat idea. I like that. And it fits in with what's happening with the story, with you having the little sleep sessions. That works. The found footage idea is really neat. I like the idea of the doctor trying that trope of found footage. And the twist that there actually aren't any cameras is a really good twist, because you keep thinking you're seeing different camera points, but it's not. It's actually the dust specks of the creatures. That's really neat. Both of those ideas are nice, and the twist with the cameras is really well done. Those make me appreciate the episode more. The ending of the episode is really weird. With it not actually being Robinson or whatever his name is, that's still a little... It's an interesting way to end the episode, but it does kind of leave me going, wait, what? So the story doesn't come together perfectly. It's fine, but it doesn't come together perfectly. But it's really those kind of two ideas that put it this high on the story. Because it is Doctor Who trying to do something different, and I can sometimes appreciate that, and in this case appreciate that. Next on the list is The Unquiet Dead, which is pretty high for a story I can't watch. This is what I consider to be the scariest episode of Doctor Who, because for some reason it unnerves me. I remember the first time I watched it, when it originally aired here in the States, which I think was in 2006, and having trouble sleeping with the light off that night. And I was in my mid-20s, but something about that episode got to me. It creeped me out. The zombies in it are done really well. My hat's off to the actors playing the zombies, because they move in this unrealistic manner, like a corpse, like something puppeteering a corpse, and that's done really well. Plus, with the makeup of how they look and the kind of blue glow and the little sounds they make, all of that comes together to create a very unnerving entity or group of entities. That's really well done. Even that scene at the end when they're trying to reach the Doctor through the bars, I'm like... The scene when Charles Dickens is reading aloud about Moriarty and the woman starts going in the audience and he's like, a lot like that. That's truly unnerving. Better. That is truly unnerving, actually. The guy playing Charles Dickens is great, by the way. The story of the Gelf and how they're trying to manipulate the Doctor to invade our world is neat. It's kind of the first Doctor Who story we get in Modern Who in the past. Nice to see Rose get that. I'm trying to remember if that's the one where she even starts trying to talk, like, in the past, and he's like, don't do that. Or if that was later with Modern Who, I forget exactly. But it's a good one. I have trouble watching it. Like, I've seen it 2 or 3 times. I don't go back and rewatch it. It unnerves me. It just unnerves me. It's placed too high, though, because it is well made and very effective. Next on the list is Army of Ghost and Doomsday, a Cybermen story that turns into a Dalek story, which you don't really see coming. This one's put together well. The mystery of what's going on is neat, how it ties in with the Age of Steel 2-parter, how it ties in with how they've been setting up Torchwood all season. The woman who runs Torchwood is well cast, by the way. I like her in this. I like the reveal of the Cybermen. I like seeing Mickey back. And then the reveal at the end of the Daleks coming out is a great cliffhanger. I love the smackdown talk between the Cybermen and the Daleks when they're talking smack to each other. I love that scene so much. I've talked about that so many times. We could defeat all 50,000 Cybermen with one Dalek. I love that scene. And then the fact they smack the Cybermen so bad. I love that. Because as dangerous as the Cybermen are, the Daleks are that much more deadly, and I love that. It's kind of Deus Machina how they defeat the Daleks, but at least there's a semi-logical explanation for it with the Void stuff drawing them in. It's a great way to get Rose out of the show without killing her off. If you want, if the only way for her to leave is in story for them to be separated because of how they feel about each other, that works. The ending where they're separated by the wall, the way it's shot, has them separated by. I think Graham Harper did this one too. Where he's leaning on the wall, she's leaning on the wall. That is fantastic. That's really, really well done to make it look like there's a wall separating them. I wish the episode had ended there. The kind of drawn out ending when they're meeting at Bad Wolf Bay is really a bit cringy for me because I never got into the whole romance thing between them anyway. But yeah, that ending kind of pulls it down a little. But other than that, I enjoy it well enough. Pretty good series finale. Next on the list is the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe, which is higher than I thought it would be, and I think it's even higher than I originally had it on the list. This one is a nice Christmas episode. The Christmas episodes tend to have a different feel to them. They can have a more fantasy element, much like Church on Ruby Road does. This one's just a nice Christmas fairy tale, and I like it for that. I love the fact it has the happy ending with their dad making it at the end because the Doctor's a time traveler. So I've never read The Lion, the Widow, and the Wardrobe, or all that, the Narnia stuff. And I get this is kind of a riff on that. I've never read those. But it seems like it has a bigger budget than a lot of the episodes. It looks really nice. It has almost a cinematic feel to it. It definitely has a Christmas feel to it. I'd only seen it once or twice before the last rewatch, and I never really thought much of it. It wasn't really one I liked. But this last watch through kind of opened my eyes to it. I enjoyed it a lot more, again, for having that different Christmas feel to it, that kind of Christmas fairy tale feel to it. Really works for this episode and made me enjoy it more. So I feel this is an underrated one. This is an episode you have to go into in the right frame of mind, in that Christmas time, you know, that way you feel about Christmas as a child, when you have that burning hope for Christmas, when Christmas is a magical time and not just a very expensive time. But when you're a kid and you love Christmas and it has a magic all its own to it, this episode is like that. And if you can get back into that frame of mind, it's very enjoyable. Next on the list is The Lodger. Again, I like the episodes with Craig. This one really works because of the fun chemistry between James and Matt and the fun chemistry between Craig and Eleven. They're just hilarious. The actual story with the Lodger upstairs is okay. It's not great, but it's okay. Craig trying to impress the girl he likes is nice, and I like the casting for her as well. But, I love Craig and Eleven together. They just strike me as roommates. They're just hilarious a lot of the times when they're together. And I enjoy that. Like when he bumps heads with Craig to share in the memories. You're it, yes. You're it, yes. I enjoy all of that. It's a fun episode, and I like that. And the last one we're going to talk about for part 2 of the list, A Town Called Mercy. This is easily my favorite story of Season 7A. Usually, I think I actually might have Asylum higher on the list, which surprises me. But usually this is the one that has the most emotional impact on me. One, it's nice to see Doctor Who have a Western that doesn't have an annoying song playing over it. I like the makeup design for the cyborg. I like the story with the cyborg. I like the story with the other Doctor from that other planet and him having to face his past and his own inner demons. I love the Doctor speaking horse. It has its comedic moments. It has its kind of action moments. It has its very emotional moments with the Doctor almost going over the edge at one point and Amy having to rein him in. It's just a well-made episode. Definitely a shining beacon from season 7A. And I do enjoy going back and rewatching this one. So that's the end of part 2. I'd like to know what you think of the list so far. Comment down below and let me know. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button as well. And there's a link to my Amazon wish list also down there. YouTube memberships are available. I want to give a shout out to some of my top tier patrons, Stephen Crane, Colin Coney, and Finn Perkins. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. There's a link to my Patreon down there if you would like to become one of my patrons on that. And most importantly, thank you for watching.